Hey guys, I'm Sean. I'm from Tennessee Truck Driving School. Today I'm here with Total Transportation, and today we're going to demonstrate how to do a proper pre-trip. Okay, I always start my inspections by walking up to the front of the vehicle. Okay, obviously I want to check both sides, make sure I'm not going to drag any tree limbs as I come out. I'll make sure I'm not going to damage the vehicle in any way. Okay, I'm going to look underneath the truck. I'm going to make sure I don't see anything leaking. I'm going to make sure the truck is not leaning to one side or the other. Okay, I'm going to check all my mirrors and my windshield. I want to make sure that they're not cracked, damaged, or loose. They're all properly mounted. I want to make sure that my windshield's clean. Okay, I want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to obstruct my view. Then I'm going to go to my lights. I want to make sure that all my lights, lenses, and reflectors, they're not cracked, damaged, or loose. They're clean and of proper color. Okay, and as I can see that my flashers are flashing. All my marker lights are on. I'm going to check all the way down my trailer. Okay, all my marker lights are on. All that stuff's working good. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the hood. Okay, you always want to be safe for your mirrors when you're walking around your hood. Make sure you don't hit yourself on the head. And we'll go ahead and start on the passenger side. All right, so I'm going to start with a general overview. Okay, I don't see anything cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking. Okay, none of my hoses or wires have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts. All right, now the first thing I like to do is go ahead and go through all my fluids. All right, obviously we can't see the washer fluid container over here, so there will be an indicator in the truck telling us if the washer fluid's low, so we'll check for that when we get in the cab. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and come into some of my main components here. Okay, my alternator is not cracked, damaged, or loose. I want to make sure that all my wires are secure. Okay, it is belt driven, so I want to put my hands on the belt. I want to make sure the belt is not frayed in any way. It's in good condition. I'm also going to tug on the belt. I'm going to make sure that it doesn't have no more than 3/4 inch of play in. Okay, my exhaust in here looks good. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. Any signs of leaking will be black soot around any of the clamps. All right, my frame through here looks good. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. There's no illegal welds on it. All right, my AC compressor, it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. Again, I'm gonna check the belt, no more than 3/4 inch play. All right, my radiator looks good. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. I would see any leaks on the ground. All right, so now there's three major things that you want to inspect. Okay, you have your suspension, you have your brakes, and you have your wheels. Okay, so try to stick to one at a time. That way you don't get yourself jumbled up. So let's go ahead and knock my suspension out real quick. Okay, on my suspension, I want to look at my shackle in the back. Okay, I want to make sure I don't see any signs of looseness. Signs of looseness would be shiny metal or metal shavings. I want to check my leaf springs, and I want to check my front hanger. Okay, my leaf springs and my front hanger. I want to make sure none of that's cracked, damaged, or loose. Okay, again, signs of looseness would be shiny metal shavings. That's what we're looking for. I want to check my U-bolts. My U-bolts are what bolts my leaf springs to my front axle, my steer axle. I want to make sure none of that's cracked, damaged, or loose. I'm going to look at my shock. I want to make sure my upper and lower shock mount is not cracked, damaged, or loose. I want to make sure that my shock isn't leaking. Signs of leaking will be hydraulic fluid on the side of the shock here. Okay, now let's go ahead. We're going to talk about our brakes. Okay, obviously I like to start from one end and work my way to the end. Okay, so I'm going to start with my brake hose and my ABS wire. I want to make sure that none of that's cracked, damaged, or loose. I want to make sure it's all secure. And you also want to make sure that your wire or hose is not in a position where it could possibly be frayed. Okay, as you can see here, they have the proper zip ties that's going to keep it from being frayed. Okay, that's real important. My brake chamber, okay, I want to make sure I don't hear any auxiliary leaks. All right, I want to make sure that all my nuts and bolts are tight and my clamp is tight. Okay, make sure none of that's cracked, damaged, or loose. My push rod, I want to make sure it's not cracked, damaged, or loose, and my slack adjuster. I want to make sure it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. Now, how to check for proper adjustment on your slack adjusters, you want to put your hand on it, and you want to tug on it, and you want to make sure that you have no more than 1 inch of play, okay? And that is with the brakes released. All right, now obviously we can do the steer axle without releasing the brakes. We're going to do the rest of them by releasing the brakes, okay? Now, I'm going to continue on with my brakes. Okay, I'm going to look in here. I'm going to look at my brake pads. All right, I want to make sure that my brake pads, for one, don't have any oil or grease on them, okay? The minimum amount of pad is 1/4 inch, so you want to make sure you have more than 1/4 inch. And you want to look in there and make sure you don't see any parts or pieces that are cracked, damaged, or loose. Now my drum, I want to make sure that my drum isn't cracked, damaged, or loose. I want to make sure that there's no oil or grease on it. Okay, I want to make sure it doesn't show any signs of excessive heat in any way. Okay, all that looks good. Now we're going to go to both sides of my rim. Okay, I'm going to check my rim. I want to make sure it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. There's no legal welds on it. Okay, and it's free from any oil or grease. All right, I'm going to check all my lug nuts. I want to make sure my lug nuts are not cracked, damaged, or loose. Now, signs of looseness here are going to be rust streaks, shiny metal, or metal shavings. All right, I'm going to check my valve stem. I want to make sure it's not cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking. All right, 100 PSI on these tires, and you always want to check it with an air gauge, okay? This is my axle seal right here, my steer axle seal, okay? I want to make sure that it is at proper operating level, and it's not. We'll make sure it's at proper operating level, and it's not leaking, okay? And that's identified by the sight glass right there, okay? Now, let's talk about my tire, okay? These cannot be recaps, they cannot be re-grooved, they must be virgin radials, and they must match on both sides, okay? They must be the same tire. The minimum tread depth for a steer axle is 4/32, okay? You want to make sure you don't have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts. You want to make sure there's no uneven wear, okay? And again, 100 PSI, we would check that with an air gauge. You want to make sure there's no abrasions, bumps, or cuts on the side of your tire. Everything looks good there, okay? So, overall view of this side of my engine compartment, everything looks good. I don't see anything leaking. Okay, I do see a light right here. Make sure my light's working. Everything seems to be in good condition over here. Again, I want to be aware of my mirrors as I walk around.